after the loss, uncertainty and turbulence of the past couple of years, Helen Nicholson has written a book to detail her journey into a life of mindfulness. Now, the book provides a practical approach on not just coping, but how to thrive in insane times. Helen unpacks how to incorporate intentional, strategic recovery into your day, and in fact, she joins us in studio this morning to talk more about this book, Mindfulness, How to Stay Sane in an Insane World. Helen, it's great to have you with us on the program this morning.
Hi, Michelle.
Thank you for joining us. And I think the topic of the book, given the stories our reporters have just told us about, and you've been sitting here listening to it, the timing is very apt.
Indeed. Never more so than right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to talk about what led you to write this book. Tell us about that.
Well, I think, I personally have suffered burnout twice, and I had a near-death experience with kind of not listening to your body. And that led me on my own personal journey. And I was a single mom of twins. I ran a business. So, I was juggling a lot of demands. And a lot of the tools that I uncovered in my own personal journey, I realized really helped me. And we started to teach them in our leadership training, and then I wanted to share it. Yeah. And I felt that COVID was the perfect opportunity to share kind of 15 minutes or 15 years of my journey into the book.
Yeah. What I like about the book is that, we think about this idea of mindfulness as this thing that enlightened people.
Yes.
A certain type of person can achieve the ideal of mindfulness and living mindfully. But you give practical ways just in everyday life of how you can take little steps on that journey.
Yeah, I think that, and it's exciting that we're doing this interview now in March, because typically this is when New Year's resolutions kind of fall off the wagon.
Oh, that late?
Yeah.
March.
Well, it kind of starts apparently from the last week in February. Yeah. And, so I think we start a year with great intentions. And I think after the last 2 years we've been through, it's been full of trauma and turmoil. And then I think we increasingly realize that 2022 could possibly be the same. So, it's how to manage yourself in amongst this, complete uncertainty. And I think often we set our goals too big. We want to, run the comrades, do an MBA, kind of give up smoking for life, lose 20 kilograms, whatever it is. And what I've realized in my own personal journey is the power of tiny, tiny small things. I started running by literally putting my running shoes at the bottom of my bed every night. So that was a very small thing, but it literally, took my life in a whole different direction, and I eventually ran the New York Marathon in 2011.
I actually want to I've actually bookmarked that particular point in the book where you talk about running the New York Marathon. You've not run a marathon since. It was your first then.
Well, I wanted it to be my only one, because I thought if I was going to do it, let me do it in style in New York.
Absolutely.
And it's an amazing, amazing day. It was definitely one of the best days of my life.
But I mean, for anyone who's run even 5 kilometers, 42 is a very big distance to cover. But exactly what you've just said about taking these small steps towards a bigger journey, that's how you approach the marathon as well.
Exactly. So, in miles, 42 kilometers is 26.2 miles. So what I did, I ran a mile 26 times. And luckily they have a refreshment stop after every mile. So then I would run that mile, I'd stop, take a photo, have a little sip of drink, and then I would run another mile. And I realized, and it was a very profound moment for me, because everything, in business or in my personal life that's hard, I break it down. Because when we break it down, it becomes a lot more manageable.
I like the parallels that you can draw between running and how you approach difficult times in your life. Because if you're starting out as a runner, it feels very daunting to even get to 3 kilometers. But to take small, manageable chunks, you don't have to run the entire 3 kilometers. You can do it a lamppost at a time. And the same applies to, it's different. People who are going through very difficult times will be listening to what I'm saying and saying it's very different, but depending on the challenge you're facing in that moment. But there's a lesson in there, isn't it?
I think, when we approaching big challenges in our lives, it's also important to uncover your stories that you tell yourself about that challenge. Because I find that behavior only changes once we challenge our story. So I write a lot about recovery, for example, in that story. And a lot of people think recovery is laziness. You know, they think it's if you're lying on the couch and you're kind of doing nothing, then that's not being very productive. And we often have messages and voices in our heads from our childhood that influence how we are, you know, in that space. But until you kind of challenge your own paradigm and your story and say, recovery is actually the secret source of high performance, then you're able to change the behavior. But the problem is if we haven't uncovered our story, and those are the New Year's resolutions that keep us kind of going around in a cul-de-sac. Year on year, we repeat the same things. It's because we've tried to go from the problem to change behavior without uncovering the story in the middle.
You're talking about self-care.
Exactly.
The important thing about taking care of who you are, taking care of the self so that you have to give.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what I find with a lot of our delegates on our leadership training programs, you know, a lot of people have so much guilt about and shame about putting themselves at the top of the list. And I say it's actually, you know, the biggest gift you can give everyone else is when you put yourself at the top of the list, because you're a better mother, you're a better wife, you're a better business person, you're a better everything when you, you know, it's that old paradigm of putting your oxygen mask on first, but it really is true.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Exercise features quite a lot in a few parts of the book. There's another part of the book here. It's page 165. And this is, again, it speaks to the issue of taking these small steps. This interesting graph where we talk about the power of tiny gains. So it's, again, this issue of New Year's resolutions, isn't it? I want to change my whole life at the beginning of 2022. But if you look at a graph like this and taking these small incremental steps over time, what that amounts to.
You see, I think we underestimate what we can achieve in 6 months, and we overestimate what we can achieve in 6 days or 6 weeks. You know, we want to in time, and then we get frustrated. So you go to gym, and if you haven't like lost 20 kilograms and you're not feeling like 100% straight afterwards, then we lose faith. Whereas it's hashtag consistency. I've realized it's those tiny small things, but doing them consistently and just carrying on. You know, because that's what that graph actually then relates to.
Yeah. There's another part, and I've now lost my part in the book, but yeah. The issue of, I want to read this quote that you've got listed here, page 173 by Gillian Michaels. It's not about perfect, it's about effort. And when you bring that effort every single day, that's where transformation happens. That's how change occurs.
Exactly. It's tiny little things consistently done, and in 6 months you can change your life.
Wow. Amazing. So who needs to pick up this book? For people who are watching this morning, who needs the kind of advice contained in what is actually quite an easy read? It's quite a quick read, and if you buy the book, you also have an audio option, so you can play it in the car as well, if you're pressed for time. But how do I take some of the lessons in a book like this and change perhaps lapses in productivity into being someone who is super productive and also living in the moment? Sure, it's like asking for a lot.
You know, I try to write it in little bite-sized chunks, and everything leads on from each other. And also, I think a lot of business books, they contain, you know, the first 3 chapters have everything, and then a lot of it kind of peters out, and there are a lot of examples. I actually think the most important chapter is the last one, the one that you were referring to, because that's where it all kind of comes together. So my encouragement is to keep on dipping into it, because you'll take something new out every time. And it's not something necessarily to be read in one sitting. It's something, read a chapter, go and experiment, and do some stuff, and then come back and, you know, keep on. It's almost like a coach in a book, I think. You know, it's someone who can, you know, you can, because I've also drawn on a lot of expertise that has helped me. So it's not just my expertise in this, it's kind of a whole umbrella.
Well, pick up the book. It's called Mindfulness, How to Stay Sane in an Insane World. Helen Nicholson joining us here in studio, unpacking some of the lessons she's learned in her own life and perhaps how we can all take something from that. This challenge of being productive, of reaching our goals, but also living in the moment, living mindfully. Helen, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks
for coming into studio.